This video is going to take a look at the formatting that we can do in Excel. Now, this is all just plain text, but what if we wanted to make it look a little bit nicer? I'm sure there must be a way. We can take a look at things such as font size and the font type. And similar to what we work with in Microsoft Word, we have similar kind of layout in the panel above. So let's take a look. Right now, this says that the format or font is symbol. What if we wanted to change that? We could. Maybe there's a specific type that we want to look for. We can also try typing it in. So Times New Roman comes up. We can change the font. We can also change the size, increasing the font size or decreasing the font size. We could also set the font to a specific size too. Maybe we want to have it at 15. So you do have the ability to change font size. We can also change the color using these color panels here. We can change it to red, change it to blue if we wanted to. We've got, what about underlining? We have the ability to underline text as well. You've got single underline, and we've got double underline. We've got bolding it, italicizing it. So a lot of the formatting options that are apparent in word processing documents are also here. But remember that this is about cells being in, or data sets being in both rows and columns. What if we want to change the cell size? We could do that, but because this is a grid, if we want to change the column width of something, we have to change the column width of the whole thing. We could do that by right-clicking after selecting the G at the top, or if you're doing a row over there, a row, and we can select column width. Microsoft Excel has its own definition for measurement, and this could be a number anywhere between 1 and 255, I think it is. Let's try changing this to 12. What happens? Well, it's obviously changed it to a larger size. So we do have the ability to change the size. And if we want to change the row, we could also change the row height here. Again, it's got its own measurement, 25. And so we could change that. If we want to change it for a group of cells, perhaps we want to do this. Row height is going to be 25. Okay. But there's also something else which we can do, which is called snapping the grid. You can try snapping the grid here. But what happens is it tries to fit the cell so that nothing else is chopped off. So let's just go back a step. What happened if we put in a 1 here? Notice how it chops off this cell here. So snapping the grid is happening by going to where a column changes. You see this little symbol here. We double click and it will automatically snap it. Now this might not be exactly how we want it to look in the end. How might we want this to look? Well, maybe we want this borders and cell alignment to go all the way across the top. We've got a merge and center icon here, which will take this and merge the cells and center it across them. So it makes sure that it looks super nice in the end. What happens if we end up snapping the lines then? Well, we're not chopping off anything. It's a snap to the longest, basically the longest value in that cell in the column. So it will predefine what the cell columns are. You can also snap the rows too. Now, just for emphasis, we can also change sizes by dragging too. And we're going to be able to emphasize this idea of cell alignment. But maybe before we get to cell alignment, let's try doing some borders. How do we change borders? You've got more than one way to do this. You've got these borders up here, which is a borders, another borders kind of line. You got more borders if you don't really find what you're looking for. So let's just say we do all borders. It will do all borders in just one thin line. You also have the option of right-clicking after selecting cells to change up the borders as well. And it'll bring up the border panel here. We could do, what if we want a thick outside border? What happens? Well, now it's done an outside border which is much thicker. What if we only want to change something like the internal lines to be double lines? Right click, but I don't see any options in here for double lines going on the verticals. There is an option, more borders, which we can pull up and it'll come up with a more kind of selective menu. So we want double lines, and we want to select it going in the middle, and we can do it on the right and on the left if we wanted to try. Okay. What if we didn't like having that the thick border gone? We could still select it back, go back, thick outside border. And what you start to notice is we got that thick outside border with double lines on the verticals here and here. So that's going through pretty much what we want to do with borders. And there's more that you could do with it, I'm sure. But we're going to move on into cell alignment. Notice that these, I put top left, top right, bottom right. How do we change where the text is? We've got these options up here which will be alignment. So when we talk about top, it's talking about the vertical alignment, where it is here. So let's just take a look at what happens when we select these. This is the top alignment, middle, and bottom. So it's changing it upon the vertical alignment. So again, top, middle, bottom. So in this case, we want to have it top, and it's already aligned at the left. If we want to emphasize what these ones below are doing, these are changing the horizontal alignment inside the cell. That's left, middle, right. By default, it will always go to the left side. That's why, technically, if you did nothing here, it would already be at the left. What if we wanted to change this to the top right? Change the vertical to the top, and change the horizontal to the right. Now it's in the top right. Bottom left, it defaults to the bottom, defaults to the left. If you want to emphasize this, bottom left, bottom right, and now the alignment is in the proper spot. This is the text is at the top left of the cell, this text is at the top right, this text is at the bottom left, this is at the bottom right. Sometimes we might want to indent some text. We can hold down the control key to select specific cells. So holding down the control key, I can select specific cells that I want to indent or change. Maybe I want to bold them. Maybe I want to italicize them. Maybe I want to indent them. So I do have, Microsoft Excel does have this ability to indent cells. Up here, we've got this increase indent and decrease indent. Clicking on it will indent it further to the right. We could do 2 indents if we wanted. And what it does is, it means that you don't have to space everything by using a space bar. In fact, if you were to go into the formula bar, there's no space here. It automatically indents it for you. You can also snap the lines if you wanted to. You can also delete columns if you wanted to as well, pushing the text or data left. Moving on, we're going to look at formatting numbers. It's here. It looks like a number. It's formatted as general. So this is really important that we end up having the proper formatting. What if we want to change this to a number? We can change it to a number. Do we want to have the decimal? Maybe, maybe not. Can we change the number of decimal places? Maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. It depends on the context of what you're using this for. Generally speaking, it will automatically default to 2 decimal places because they think about currency. We can increase the number of decimal places or decrease it and get rid of them altogether. We can't go any further than that because it would start chopping off numbers, which it doesn't allow. If this is currency, then we have options of changing this to regular currency. So it takes something and makes it look nice. $sign, commas, and properly formatted with 2 decimal places. Now, we don't just have to go towards accounting. What if we just wanted to have a number? We can also just add in our own commas as we like. There's more options that you can do with formatting through the formatting panel up above. Notice here, you can start to also indicate number of decimal places, whether or not there's a symbol, and more. Now, Microsoft Excel has its own formatting and its defaults. What happens if I put in 2-10? Sometimes it's really annoying because it automatically thinks that it's a date. But what if I didn't want this to be a date? How can I change this to just being text? You do have the option of coming back here and changing this to text. Now, a number has come up because inside the program it's got a number since a specific date, and that's what this number is, a certain number of, I think, seconds since a specific date in the computer program. Now what happens if we put in 2-10? Well, it stays as 2-10, and that's because we formatted it as text. Let's take a look at formatting dates. I think today's date is April 8th, 2020. 8/4/2020. And what we start to see here is it did show it as a date. It put it in as a day, month, year. But there are plenty of other options that we could look at. Going into more number formats, we could change this to a short date, long date, 8 April 2020. So you do have options. That's pretty much it for that. Let's take a look at text wrapping. This is a very long sentence that gets chopped off when there's something that is in the cell next to it. So let's just see what's happening. If we put in a 1 here, everything else gets chopped off. What happens if we want this to go onto the next line? There's something called text wrapping, which up here we can have it go to the next line. The only problem is when we do that, it's trying to stay with it, put all that text within this kind of column width here. So we want to change that. We can change it, but then it starts to end up changing things a little bit more than what we might like. Zoom out a bit and snap the grid vertically. So what you do start to realize is that text wrap will end up making sure that it goes within a cell only. The downside is if you've got that cell or the column super narrow, it's going to try and wrap it really far down. That concludes the video on formatting in Microsoft Excel. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have any questions, email me or post something on the Google Classroom. Enjoy!